they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah,
I wanted to get into something I think is really, really important, which is men's health. And that seems to be your focus. So can you speak a little bit about, what your focus is and how you got into that?
Yeah, so I help men find purpose and passion again by healing any subconscious trauma they might have. Subconscious trauma being trauma that you don't know you have, right? So these trauma is the psychological impact of an event, not the event itself. So a lot of us don't think that we have trauma, but when we uncover some of the behavior patterns that we have, we find that there's a lot underneath that exists there.
Yeah, how'd you end up focusing on men?
Well, I was solving my own problems and I decided to post content on LinkedIn, which is actually where you found me. And this was 4 years ago, and only men reached out to me for help. So I really saw at that point how little support men had with mental health. And I just decided to be on their side, be on their team.
Wow. So can you share what it was that you posted that ended up resonating with men? Because we typically hear that men are reluctant to reach out, maybe they feel weak or something, and when they're asking for help, and they don't do so very often. So that's interesting that more men reached out than women. What was it that you posted, if you don't mind sharing?
It wasn't like ever one post. It was just like the type of videos I think I was posting. I was posting about mindset, and I was creating explanatory videos on, let's say I was talking about getting stuck. I said, the reason why you're getting stuck is X, Y, Z. And so I think a lot of men felt comfortable reaching out when my videos were very clear cut and action oriented, because men are very action oriented.
Yeah. So what have you been seeing? And after chatting with like thousands of men, what have you been this last 4 years you mentioned? Have you been seeing certain trends, when it comes to like men's health, like mental health, physical health, spiritual health, professional, ability, success? Like, have you seen certain trends over the last 4 years? And if so, what are those trends you're seeing?
Absolutely. In the beginning, because 4 years ago, there was really like little to no support for men's mental health. So it was kind of the start of realizing that they even had some issues, that they struggled with work-life balance, that maybe they were suffering from nice guy syndrome. Now, 4 years later, I think it's become more of a fad. And there's a lot more relationship dynamics popping up. At first, the relationship dynamics they were struggling with was like they don't know how to connect. They don't know how to have a lasting relationship. They don't know how to really just be on the same level with their partner. And now it's kind of like this battle between masculine and feminine energy. They feel emasculated a lot. Feminism is the worst. Like there's definitely trends that go on. But the biggest one has always been within relationships.
And on the relationship side, so what are the men talking about, or what are they concerned about or complaining about the most?
Well, they complain about the fact that their partner doesn't give them enough attention. They don't feel respected. They don't feel appreciated. They don't connect, and they feel like they're doing and doing and doing everything for their partner, but their partner is just not receiving of it, not appreciating of it.
Yeah, I kind of hear and read about that, kind of that term respect a lot. So what does that mean, right? Because a lot of people talk about respect, you know, can you kind of talk about that? Like how does respect, why is respect so important to men? And what does it even mean? Does that mean that the woman is, or even other men are going to bow down to them and agree with everything they say? Or, when they expect or can benefit from this thing called respect, what is it exactly?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that, because a lot of people do throw that term around, and you ask many of the men who use that, and they also cannot define it. So we're just kind of throwing something out there that we don't have a definition of success. And I think that a man who demands respect is a man who lacks respect within himself, and he's seeking that external validation. Men who just want to be respected, it's an energetic reciprocation of energy to say, I trust that you know what you're doing. So I'm not going to tell you how to put the dishes back in the cupboard. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job that you've been doing for 20 years. I'm not going to try to boss you around and be your mother. So it's not necessarily what the partner has to do. It's kind of like the minus of the negative behaviors that have cropped up over the span of time, if that makes sense. Like less criticism, less bossing around, less like just trying to be someone's mother.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so why, like, have you dove into why that's so important for men? Because men and women have their own just internal needs. And why is this idea of respect so important to the male population?
Because respect for men equates to love. Because, women, like little girls and little boys, are treated differently as they're raised. Women are much more nurtured. Men are taught, stop crying, rub some dirt on it, you're fine. They're taught to be more adventurous. They're taught to be leaders. So in their adult lives, if they are not given the trust that they can be a leader, that they can do things by themselves, it just feels emasculating. Like it doesn't feel like they're appreciated for the one thing that they were taught to do since they were young. Just kind of like if a woman is scolded for not being warm or not being nurturing, it's just like offensive almost, because it's your innate ability.
Right. Yeah. It's like men put a tremendous amount of value on themselves, I guess depending on the type of respect they get or how much respect. Would that be true?
I mean, that's definitely true. I think a man who's more evolved doesn't necessarily lean too much on an outside perspective for that to fulfill him. But I think a lot of men definitely get fulfillment from how much respect they get from the community, from their spouses, from their kids.
And so you mentioned nice guy syndrome. So what is that? And what causes that for men?
Nice guy syndrome is essentially, it's not just being a nice guy, right? We don't want to get confused, because you can be a nice guy and also be a respectable man who has boundaries. A nice guy is a man who tries to do things overtly to get things done for him. So he'll pay for the dinner with the underlying expectation that he's going to get some action after. He will not have any boundaries. He won't have any standards. He'll just be the quote unquote nice guy. But at the end of the day, he's just being very manipulative. But you can be a respectable man and still be nice if you're not crossing your own boundaries.
And so what happens to those guys? Because we hear the whole thing about nice guys finish last. Like what does that even mean? And in reality, not just slogans, but in reality, how do women perceive so-called nice guys, and what direction does being a nice guy steer the man to? Is it they end up in more conflicts and issues and lack of self-worth, or do they end up going down the road that's the opposite?
Yeah. So anybody who lacks boundaries ends up having low self-esteem and ends up not being liked by the other sex. Even women who lack boundaries end up not being respected by men. So either they get taken advantage of, or they get completely ignored because there's this ick factor that comes in, and they have already had low self-esteem, which has caused them to have the nice guy behavior. But the more they continue having behaviors that support that limiting belief that nice guys finish last, that they're always going to get taken advantage of, the more it just kind of goes into this spiral of more negative thoughts. It doesn't get better from there and make their self-esteem higher. Maybe it'll make their ego higher because they'll probably start being an asshole. But at the end of the day, they still don't get what they want, right? Which is true connection, true fulfillment. So the only way to break out of that is to just start being able to set boundaries in a healthy way that creates self-respect. And then you get that external respect and you actually find people who you can be connected with.
Yeah. So how does because I have an 8-year-old son, right? So how do parents teach their sons to kind of walk that fine line of being respectful being kind, being nice, but also having certain standards or and boundaries, as you call it, you know, when you're growing up and when you're in a relationship, when you're meeting new people, like what do we as parents, you know, teach our kids, and how do we approach that for those of us who have young boys?
Yeah, so it's all about, how do you respect yourself? How do you treat yourself on a daily basis? How does your spouse treat you? How do you treat each other in public? How do you love your spouse? Like, even if you're divorced or you're a co-parent, how are you showing up as a man? Because kids, you don't need to like look at a lesson but like, how am I going to teach him this? Because they're not listening to what you say. They're watching what you do, because you are their hero. Every parent, no matter who you are, like, to your child, you are their hero. So whether you let them down or not is totally contingent, not upon what you teach them, but about how you respect yourself. So do you have good boundaries? Do you have good core values? How are you showing up in the community? How do other people treat you, talk to you, respect you? They are soaking all of that in, and that is what they will subconsciously realize as their foundation for love, respect, how they should act, what they should accept, how they should treat people. So I'm glad that you brought this up, because some people stay in very toxic relationships for the kids, and they don't realize that if they wouldn't want their child to go through that, not to put themselves through that, because all they're doing is telling their children that it's okay and that this is what should happen.
Yeah, and that kind of gets down to my curiosity of like, what are the root causes of these issues we're talking about, right? Like nice guy syndrome and work-life balance you mentioned is probably separate but related, and also relationship issues or conflicts and not knowing how to be in a relationship, not working on the relationship. Like, what have you seen kind of a common denominator of like two or three different things that are the causes of this? Because there seems to be a tremendous amount of lack of knowledge, skill, and ability for men in general of knowing how to navigate through this thing called life. And is it because they didn't have a role model growing up? Is it because of movies that are maybe portraying certain things that men are now trying to follow? You know, what are the causes from your experience that you've seen that's causing the male population to be this way?
So everything that we have a foundation for starts in childhood, and what type of environment we grew up in, along with the care our caregivers were able to give us, not just physically, but emotionally. And a lot of the reason men and women are the way that they are is because one or both parents were emotionally inadequate, because we grew up in an era where emotions weren't categorized as important. It was, how do we get food, shelter, water to the kids? Kids are better seen, not heard, right? So all of the emotions were invalidated. Shove them under the rug, put a smile on. You know, we grew up in a generation that basically said, obliterate your own boundaries. You have to do what you're told, you know, like, you don't get a say. So when your own emotions are ignored, you ignore your emotions, but your emotions are telling you something. They're guidelines for something. And when you don't know how to connect with yourself, how could you possibly connect with someone else? So that's one thing. Another thing is, we did grow up in an era, and we're still growing up in an era. I think I forgot what the statistics are, but there's a huge percentage of families without fathers. So if a family doesn't have a father, we're assuming it's a single mother household. And men and women have different roles when it comes to parenting. You can take care of a child and raise them from a child to an adult, but it doesn't mean you can cover every single aspect if you're a male or a female. Like, you can't cover both. So something is going to lack. And if a mom is a single mom and she's working and taking care of the kids, she's stressed out, she's not going to have the ability to nurture her children like she should be able to. So she's not able to emotionally reflect back to the child in a way that makes them feel cared for. So there's a lot of us who have grown up without the nurturing of the mother and without the role model of the father. So then when a man grows up without a male father figure, he loses touch with his masculinity, and then he latches onto societal expectations. Then he latches onto mentors and movies, because that's all he has. And when he has a mother who is ignoring him or expecting him to be the father of the household, he takes on responsibilities that are not necessarily his, and his ability to understand the difference between a partner and a substitute father figure are like so blurred. So he doesn't understand how to be a proper partner because he never actually got to be a proper child.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. You say that because I think we see the implications of this, right? We see a lot of, boys and young men in particular, committing crimes, lashing out, being disrespectful. I mean, with social media now, there's videos of all this stuff going on, and it seems to be increasing year after year. And a lot of it, like you mentioned, relates to not having what they need in the household. Whether their father's not even present at all or he's around, but not giving the proper attention and mentorship that his duty requires. So let's talk a little bit about like the work-life balance, because I know personally I have that struggle as well, and I think we all do because we all have so many things in our lives. But as a parent, I'm my focus is on the children, but as a business owner, my focus is also on the business, which is like another child. So how are you seeing this as kind of one of the top concerns and issues that men are having? And what are they saying? Are they saying that they want to spend more time with family, but they can't because of their businesses? Or they're saying that they're not spending any time with their family and 100% of their focus has been on business and it's causing marital problems and other conflicts and things like that? Like, what trends are you seeing on the work-life balance issue? Because this has been discussed for the last at least 3 or 4 years, a lot more, I think, than in the past. And so what, from your perch, what are you seeing?
So basically everything that you just said. And I think that the biggest complaint is even when I go home, I can't shut it off. So even if you're with your kids, you're still kind of thinking about the emails, the next thing that you got on your plate. When you go to bed, you have anxiety, you wake up maybe a couple times during the night, it just never shuts off. That is the biggest complaint that I get. And it comes from feeling like nothing is ever enough. Like I can't do enough to ever catch up. But even when you get in the silence, you don't know what to do. So men have this huge struggle of like, okay, I have all this work, but then even if they get to the vacation, they don't know what to do with themselves. They can't relax. So they feel totally lost. You're smiling. Is that something you resonate with?
All the time. I mean, just my, my background and just the ability to focus on work and then, I'm trying to become more present and I am, when I'm with the kids, but there's so much to do, but really it's more for me, there's so much to do for my kids. So everything I do when it comes to work and my ambitions and my goals, all of those are for the children. So, I chat with men all the time and we have our luncheons and we discuss this topic. How do I do what I need to do for my family, which we're willing to do, but that ends up requiring a certain amount of sacrifice. And you can't both be with clients and networking and prospecting and working on business stuff simultaneously while you have your kid on your lap. It just doesn't usually work out that way. So there has to be a sacrifice with time either way. Either you're sacrificing a little bit for the business, you're sacrificing a little bit with the children. So finding that so-called balance may not even be possible, right? I think it might have to do with what is the individual looking for, what are they seeking personally, and what does balance mean for them? But from my perspective, everything I do is for the kids. At the same time, I want to make sure I'm present enough and making sure I'm fulfilling my duty as a father and a parent for the children. And I think women and mothers relate to this as well, where you can't shut off your mind. You're busy even when you're at the dinner table with the kids. You got things going on in your head. So, and I don't know. I'm sure there's some unhealthy aspects to that, but at the same time, I think it's a sign of parents who care for their children. Business is 24/7. And in today's world, if you want to be successful in business and you want to make sure that your kids are given what they need to survive, number one, and then thrive, especially in this increasingly difficult world that we're living in that requires a lot more tokens, or what people call money. You got to get out and you got to collect a lot of tokens. You got to make sure you provide a lot of value into the planet and make sure that you're collecting a lot of tokens. People today are complaining food's more expensive, gas is more expensive, housing, childcare, education, all that stuff. So, what do? Do you spend more time, being with the kids and not working, or are you trying to find some happy medium to fulfill those goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, it's kind of everybody is struggling. And I just completely agree with what you said about the work-life balance. Like, there's no such thing as like, oh, you're going to spend 50% of your time at work and 50% of your time at home, and it's going to be like this clear thing. I think when people say they want more work-life balance, is they just want to feel more balanced internally. And sometimes that's going to be, sometimes I have to spend more time with my kids because they have like a recital or it's their birthday. And then sometimes I have to spend more time on work because I know that this is going to help them in the long run. Right. And those are the balanced moments that you have to find yourself. And then, like, where do you put yourself in the mix? Because if you're not healthy, if you're not feeling good, if you're not feeling rested at certain points, you're not showing up as a father or a businessman. So you have to put yourself at the top of the totem pole.
And what have you seen are the implications of men not being men, men not fulfilling their potential? What are kind of the societal implications you've seen, and then also on more of a micro level with just the internal family unit?
Yeah, men who don't live up to their potential become totally destructive to themselves and to others. Because men know that they have potential, and men are so powerful, and they have these innate skills and abilities to be the best in a certain area of their skill set, right? And when they don't exert that power towards a goal or towards that potential, they exert it in self-destruction or external destruction. Like you said, they because you see, like, men can be very destructive, right? Like robbery, like, and this isn't to say women don't do these things either, but men are much more impactful with it because, hello, they're stronger, they're very innovative. Like, a lot of men are natural businessmen, right? They know how to solve problems. So if he's not putting his effort towards his potential in a good way, he's going to put effort towards his potential in a bad way. He's going to exert his energy somewhere, and he will become successful. There's a lot of successful drug dealers, right? Like, there's a lot of successful crime people. Like, they can become massively destructive to society.
Yeah, and so what are the kind of the biggest mistakes men are doing to themselves? Because that's what I also want to touch on. Because what are men doing in terms of their lifestyle, in terms of maybe diet, in terms of business, in terms of like relationships? What are they doing inadvertently that ends up sabotaging their own life?
Yeah. So, I mean, anything like diet or exercise or whatever, I see that those all as symptomatic. I always go towards the core values. When a man doesn't keep his word, he loses respect for himself. So it doesn't keep his word to himself and to others. So if he says, yeah, I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out tomorrow, and then doesn't, it's like a little paper cut to himself. He automatically starts subconsciously losing respect for himself. He doesn't feel like a respectable man, and then he's going to project that on other people. Oh, they don't respect me. Yeah, because you don't respect yourself because you're not doing what you said you were going to do. A man is his word. So if he doesn't follow his own word, he's already going down the wrong path. And the second thing is, like, if he doesn't take accountability for himself. So if he doesn't follow his word and doesn't go work out, but just makes a bunch of excuses for it, or, someone calls him out on his shit and he gaslights them, or, tries to hide behind some excuse, he like double loses respect for himself, because now he's not only a man who doesn't follow his word, he's a man who lies. He's a man who doesn't take accountability. And if you don't take accountability, you don't change anything. And if you don't change anything, your life doesn't change. And then you have to keep making more and more excuses and keep lying to yourself and keep not following your word in order to uphold this lie that you told yourself. So it's like, those are the top two things. If you can start taking accountability, and if you can start keeping your word, even for the smallest things, your self-respect will start to just snowball, and you will start working out. You will start reading the self-help books. You will start making more money. And that just piles on undeniable self-confidence, which is what a man needs in order to really flourish.
So how can women help, right? Because a lot of these, a lot of these men end up interacting with women in some way. That could be their sister, it could be their mother, it could be their girlfriend, their wife, whoever it is, right? So how can women help men that they know, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at home, whether it's a friendship, what can women do to support men? Because, like you mentioned, and it's a great point, that men can be destructive when they're focused their energy in the wrong direction. And that has an effect on society. It has an effect on the family unit, on the workplace, everywhere. So how do we create a world where there's healthier men is another rhetorical question. But the direct question is, what can women do, if anything, to help support men?
Comes to something like a spouse or a sister or a mother, they can definitely be more nurturing. So instead of just saying, oh, he's a man, he's got it, create a little bit of a safe space so that if he comes to you with a problem, you're not just brushing it off. You're not just giving him advice or belittling him or telling, because a lot of times when men go to women for their problems, it's either used against them or they're like scolded for doing that choice. When we really need to have more understanding and compassion, they're coming to you because they see you as a safe space and they're trying to figure something out. Everybody is at different stages of learning. So if you can create a safe space, then you become a woman who's representative of women being safe for a man. And a lot of men go off on a destructive path because they don't feel like they have a safe space. They can't ever process anything. They don't feel like they have anywhere to go. So by you creating a safe space as a woman, it gives him an outlet to explore more of his emotions, process more of what he's going through, so then he can actually find healthy pathways instead of destructive ones.
They don't have to suffer in silence.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the men who are going through certain struggles, whether it's a work-life balance or relationships or any of the things we talked about, what is the first step? Because you mentioned, men that have these concerns and these conflicts, they may not be disciplined, right? To do the other things like get to the gym, to eat right, to do self-study. So for someone in that position, they're what is the first step that they can take, right? Just to kind of create that crack where they could finally go through the door eventually.
I mean, the first step that anybody has to take is being open to the fact that things can change. So you mentioned, people who are like, they don't have the drive to go to the gym or do the self-help, or like they're just not ready yet. Like there's no one thing that can help those people except maybe suffering more, because they just haven't hit the level yet where they're willing to do what it takes. Because in order to make a change, you have to make a change. There's no just like one thing that comes to you that you're like, okay, I guess this fixes everything now. It's usually getting to rock bottom. So if you're in that position and you're like, well, I don't have the motivation, I don't have the energy. Okay, like maybe you just haven't suffered enough yet. And that sounds really cold, but sometimes that's like where we need to get to. Like be aware, or else be open to saying, okay, things can change for me. Because if things can change for someone who was in the Holocaust and came out and had a happy life, things can change for you. Use that as your motivation, that whatever you're going through, somebody else has gone through it and worse, and they've still somehow found a light in their heart to live a good life. So if they can do it, you can find that light too. It's possible for you, and hold on to that as your hope while you get to the next step.
Have you had a lot of clients who've reached out to you where they're just at rock bottom and made a complete, 180-degree change?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
All of them. I'm the Hail Mary coach, right? Like before people come to me, they've usually gone to therapy, they've done medication, they've been doing something for years, and it's not like they're about to jump off a cliff, but they just feel like this is my life and I don't know what I'm going to do next. And the thing is, a lot of coaching programs and a lot of therapies, they really focus on healing the symptoms so people feel better for a little while. And we focus on healing the root cause. And the root cause is one thing that we focus on solving, but it heals a lot of those other symptoms. So once you can do that, then you no longer need to go to so many therapy sessions or coaching sessions, because you've changed the foundation of how you operate, not just a slight mindset shift or something like that.
So when people reach out to you, can you kind of give me an idea and peek of, you know, what happens? So, right. So people say, all right, I want to reach out to Elise, and what can they expect when they finally reach out?
Yeah. So when people reach out to me, they apply through a link on my page, and it's got a few questions like, you know, have you done therapy before? What are you going through right now? We kind of do an analysis of where you're at. I listen to the problems that are going on right now, which are the symptoms, right? And then we inquire about, tell me how you grew up, kind of like a psychologist does, because I need to be made aware of the patterns that you've adapted yourself to. Once we become aware of the patterns, then I explain in a very kind of scientific way, okay, what I'm hearing from you is this is what you went through. This is the pattern that's usually created from that. And this is what we have to do in order to rewrite that pattern. And we use it with a very logical, action-oriented approach. So then we can, you know, have tangible progress throughout coaching.
And what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
If you want to get in touch with me for a session, you just apply through my website, EliseMicheals.com. Or I'm on any social media available if you ever want to just watch more content.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm going to put your links down in the description, and it's been really insightful. And I definitely encourage everybody listening to reach out, and you know, get some help. And I think, you know, they need to do it for themselves. They need to do it for their family. And I think society as a whole, including other men, would want to work with men who are, you know, productive, who are reaching their full potential, right? Who are on a journey to success, which means success personally and professionally. So, you know, we could all thrive together and have a better society to live in. So I think what you're doing is great. And I applaud you for, you know, serving men and being someone out there who's non-judgmental and available for men, because I think it's really, really difficult, like we talked about, for men to reach out at first. You know, especially because they may have experience with maybe someone in their family who is judgmental, whether it's their spouse, whether it's their mother. They also don't want to appear maybe weak, or other things. So there's that block there. So once again, I applaud you for making yourself available. And thanks for chatting with me today. It's been great chatting with you, Elise.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you everyone who's listening.
Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah, I'm addicted to the grind, man.